In a world where technology promises absolute truth, the line between reality and illusion begins to blur. This is the story of Oliver, a man whose trust in a perfect system unravels the very fabric of his existence, revealing a horror far more profound than he could have ever imagined.
The hum of the server rack in the corner of my home office was a steady, almost comforting drone. It was the only constant in a world that felt like it was accelerating, always pulling something new out of its digital hat. Today's trick was Cognito. Cognito, they called it. A facial recognition app, but not like the clumsy, often foiled attempts of the past. This was different. This was perfect. The reviews heralded it as revolutionary, terrifying, inevitable. It could pick out a single face in a stadium crowd, identify a person from a grainy childhood photo, even distinguish between identical twins with uncanny accuracy. Its database, according to the hype, was virtually limitless, continually learning, perpetually expanding. It worked flawlessly, instantly, every single time. A green confirmation icon, a small checkmark in a circle, would pop up, along with the person's verified identity, pulled from a network of public and private data that made you wonder if privacy had ever truly existed. I was Oliver, 42, systems analyst, and somewhat of a digital skeptic, despite my profession. I believed in data, yes, but also in human error, in the beautifully chaotic variables of flesh and blood. Cognito, however, seemed to defy all that. It promised an absolute, undeniable truth in identification. I'd downloaded it a week ago, mostly out of morbid curiosity. My first few days were spent playing with it like a new toy. I'd point my phone's camera at the TV, and instantly, the news anchor, the movie star, the politician, would be identified. I'd walk down the street, discreetly scanning strangers, and watch the green checkmark appear over their heads, followed by a name, sometimes even a social media handle. It was unnerving, fascinating, and in a twisted way, exhilarating. It felt like I was seeing through the world, peeling back a layer of anonymity we all took for granted. The app never failed. Never once. Tonight was a typical Tuesday. Natalie, my wife, was in the kitchen, humming softly as she prepped dinner, her famous lasagna, the smell already wafting through the house. Our children, Mark, 10, and Mia, 7, were sprawled on the living room rug, arguing good-naturedly over a board game. The golden hour light streamed through the window, painting the familiar scene in hues of warmth and comfort. This was my life. My family. My world. I walked into the living room, phone in hand, a playful grin on my face. "Hey guys," I said, "check this out. The legendary Cognito app. It supposedly knows everyone." Mark, ever the inquisitive one, looked up. "Really, Dad? Can it tell who I am?" "Let's find out." I chuckled, raising the phone. I aimed the camera at Mark first. His sandy hair, still tousled from school, fell over his forehead. His blue eyes, wide with anticipation, met the lens. I tapped the screen. The app word, a faint digital murmur from the speaker. I expected the immediate green checkmark, the flash of his name, a picture-perfect match of Mark Miller, born October 12, 2013. Instead, a chillingly sterile notification popped up, stark white text on a black background, exactly where Mark's face was. "Object not recognized." My smile faltered. My breath hitched. "What?" I mumbled, more to myself than to them. The app was infallible. It couldn't be. It had to be a glitch. The light, perhaps? Too much glare from the window. "What is it, Dad?" Mia piped up, her voice innocent, oblivious. I ignored her, my eyes fixed on the screen, then on Mark. He still looked like Mark. Still was Mark. My son. "Hold still," I said, perhaps a little too sharply. I adjusted the angle, tilting the phone, trying again. Same result. Object not recognized. A knot tightened in my stomach. This was impossible. Let me try Mia, I said, my voice now strained. I swung the camera to my daughter. Her dark pigtails, her mischievous grin, a missing front tooth when she laughed. My daughter. My sweet Mia. A tap. A whir. The same icy black box. Object not recognized. My hand trembled. The phone felt heavy, suddenly cold. My mind, usually so rational, began to grasp at straws. A subscription error? No, I'd paid. A network issue? My Wi-Fi was strong. Oliver? Is everything okay? Natalie's voice floated in from the kitchen, laced with concern. Yeah, fine, just a weird app bug, I called back, forcing a lightness I didn't feel. I turned the camera towards Natalie as she walked in, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Her warm, familiar face, the faint lines around her eyes when she smiled, her auburn hair, always a little wild. This was it. She'd break the pattern. This would prove it was a glitch. I aimed. I tapped. Object not recognized. 3 times. 3 times, my family, my wife, my children, were invisible to the app. Like phantoms. Like data points wiped from existence. My heart hammered against my ribs. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead. This was a nightmare. This wasn't happening. Then, a desperate, irrational thought sparked. What about me? If they weren't recognized, what did that mean for me? Would I be the same? Would the app confirm some terrible, universal invalidation of our entire family? With a morbid curiosity that tasted like dread, I turned the camera on myself. My reflection in the screen stared back at me, haggard, pale. I tapped. The familiar digital whir. A flash. Then, unmistakably, beautifully, terrifyingly, a brilliant green confirmation icon appeared over my face. Oliver Miller. Born April 3, 1981. With a detailed profile. The app, the supposedly flawless, utterly perfect app, recognized me. And only me. The lasagna, which moments ago had smelled so comforting, now seemed to curdle in the air. The laughter of my children, the pleasant hum of Natalie, suddenly felt discordant, alien. I was staring at my family, my entire world, and the app, in its infinite wisdom, declared them nothing. And me? Me it knew. Me it verified. I clutched the phone, my knuckles white. Everything all right, honey? Natalie asked, her smile still in place, but her eyes, I now noticed, held a flicker of something close to concern for my odd behavior. Perfectly fine, I lied, forcing a smile that felt like tearing my own face. Just, the app's a dud. Total scam. I shoved the phone quickly into my pocket, the green confirmation icon on my face burning into my mind's eye. Dinner was a blur. I picked at my lasagna, each bite tasting like ash. My usual banter with Mark fell flat. Mia's stories about school seemed distant, muffled. I kept glancing at them, truly looking at them, for the first time in years, perhaps. Little imperfections that had once been endearing, the slight asymmetry of Mark's nose, the way Mia's lips pursed when she concentrated, the tiny scar above Natalie's eyebrow from a childhood accident. They were all there. Physically. Visibly. But the app. The app that could identify a single strand of hair from a pixelated image. The app that saw through every disguise, every filter, every attempt at anonymity. It hadn't seen them. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, Natalie's even breathing beside me, and stared at the ceiling. The fear was a cold, creeping thing, wrapping itself around my chest. It wasn't just a bug. I knew, with the certainty of a man confronting an impossible truth, that it wasn't. Cognito didn't have bugs. Its entire marketing premise was built on its utter perfection. I slipped out of bed, grabbed my phone, and went to the bathroom, locking the door. The fluorescent light hummed, casting harsh shadows. I opened Cognito again. I scrolled through recent scans. Celebrities, my colleagues at work, even a photo of my deceased grandmother, pulled from an old family album. All green checkmarks. All perfectly identified. Then I paused. There was no record of my scans of Mark, Mia, or Natalie. The app had acted as if I hadn't even pointed it at a person. There was no not recognized entry in its history, because it literally hadn't processed them as recognizable. They were just blank space. Objects. My mind reeled. If the app was perfect, then what did its failure to recognize them mean? That they weren't real? That they weren't human? The thought was so absurd, so monstrous, that I almost laughed. But the laugh caught in my throat, strangled by the raw terror building inside me. I tried again. I pointed the phone at a framed photo of our family on vacation last summer. All of us smiling, sun-kissed. I tapped. A green checkmark appeared over my face. And the same black. Object not recognized. Boxes over Natalie, Mark, and Mia. Even in a still image, even from the past, the app seemed to know. I spent the next few days in a fog of paranoia. My work suffered. My conversations became stunted, my answers curt. I found myself watching my family, really watching them, searching for any telltale sign, any crack in their facade. Natalie, ever perceptive, noticed. "Oliver, you've been so quiet lately," she said one evening, touching my arm. "Is everything all right? The new project stressing you out?" I flinched at her touch, a purely involuntary reaction. Her hand felt warm, soft, human. Yet the memory of the black box over her face, the words, "Object not recognized," was seared into my brain. No, just a lot on my mind," I mumbled, pulling away slightly. Mark asked me to help him with his homework. As I leaned over his shoulder, checking his math, I noticed the faint smell of his shampoo, the warmth emanating from his small body. He was tangible, real. But the app said otherwise. Mia, curled up on the couch, watching cartoons, giggled at something on screen. Her laughter was infectious, genuine. Or was it? Every gesture, every word, every laugh, every touch, was now filtered through the horrifying lens of object not recognized. I started scrutinizing their eyes. Were they truly sparkling with joy, or was there an emptiness behind them I hadn't noticed before? Was Natalie's concern for me genuine, or a carefully constructed performance? Was Mark's occasional mischievousness a sign of a real, developing personality, or just a programmed response? I tried to rationalize it. Maybe Cognito wasn't perfect. Maybe it had a blind spot for people connected to me. But why? And why only for them? Why not my parents or my friends, who were also connected to me? No, the app worked flawlessly on everyone else. The anomaly was specific to my immediate family. And the solution, the dreadful, soul-crushing solution, seemed to be that they were the anomaly. The thought began to gnaw at me. What if I'm the only one left? What if, some time ago, something had happened, something imperceptible, and my family had been replaced? Replaced with something that looked, sounded, acted exactly like them, but lacked the core essence of being human. And only Cognito, the all-seeing, all-knowing digital oracle, had seen through the charade. I started experimenting. I'd point the camera at our pet cat, and the app would instantly register. Feline, domesticated. At a plant, Ficus benjamina. It recognized a dog walking by outside. It recognized a fly buzzing around the window. It recognized life. Yet, for Natalie, Mark, and Mia, it returned nothing but the chilling object not recognized. They weren't even registering as a species. They were just objects. Like furniture. Like a wall. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. The silence of the nights amplified my dread. I started staying up later and later, poring over old family photos, searching for any inconsistencies. Did Mark always hold his teddy bear like that? Was Mia's smile always so wide? Had Natalie's eyes always been that particular shade of hazel? But memory is a fickle thing, easily warped by fear. Every innocent detail now seemed sinister. My sanity began to fray. I became irritable, snapping at the kids for minor things, withdrawing from Natalie. She tried to talk to me, genuinely tried, but her words, laced with what seemed like true affection, only fueled my terror. How could she speak of love, of shared memories, when the app said she wasn't even a person? One evening, I couldn't take it anymore. The weight of the secret, the crushing isolation, the horrifying implication of my unrecognized family, became too much to bear. We were sitting at the dinner table again, a bowl of spaghetti between us. Mark was telling a convoluted story about his friend, Mia was giggling, and Natalie was listening with her usual patient smile. I felt a surge of cold fury, mixed with desperate, primal fear. I pulled out my phone, my hands shaking so violently I almost dropped it. "What's wrong, Oliver?" Natalie asked, her smile freezing slightly as she saw the phone, saw the wild look in my eyes. "This," I hissed, pointing the phone at her, my voice low and trembling. "This is what's wrong." I tapped the screen. The familiar black box instantly appeared over her face. "Object not recognized." Her eyes widened, just for a moment, an almost imperceptible flicker of something unreadable. Then she looked down at her plate, her fork clattering softly against the ceramic. "It's just an app, Oliver," she said, her voice eerily calm, too calm. "Probably a bug. You're letting it get to you." "A bug?" I roared, slapping the phone onto the table. It slid, screen up, revealing the terrible truth for all to see. "A bug? This app is perfect, Natalie. It identifies everyone. Every single person on the planet. But not you. Not Mark. Not Mia." I spun the phone around, pointing it at Mark, then Mia. The same black box, the same chilling message. They looked up at me, their faces blank, suddenly devoid of the innocent curiosity or concern I expected. Their eyes, once so full of life, seemed to reflect only the harsh overhead light. "Why?" I whispered, my voice breaking. "Why won't it recognize you? What are you?" Natalie finally looked up, her expression hardening. The patience was gone, replaced by something else. Something cold. Calculating. Her lips, which had always been so soft, so inviting, now formed a thin, tight line. "You're scaring them, Oliver," she said, her voice flat, devoid of emotion. It wasn't the voice of my wife. It was a replica. A perfect, chilling imitation. "No," I said, shaking my head, backing away from the table. "You're scaring me. The app, it knows. It knows you're not real." As I spoke, something shifted. Not just in their expressions, but in their very presence. The air in the room grew heavy, suffocating. The golden hour light outside seemed to dim, replaced by a creeping twilight. Mark, who had been silently watching, slowly set down his fork. His eyes, fixed on me, were now utterly empty. Mia mirrored his movement, her small, round face suddenly devoid of any childish warmth. They were no longer my children. They were things. Imitations. And in their eyes I saw not fear, but a dawning recognition. They recognized me. The anomaly. The one who knew. Natalie rose from her chair, her movements fluid, too graceful, too precise. She walked around the table, not towards me, but towards the phone I had left abandoned. She picked it up, her fingers, which I remembered entwining with mine so many times, now seemed long, pale, utterly devoid of life. She looked at the screen, then at me. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips. A smile that didn't reach her eyes. "It works perfectly, doesn't it, Oliver?" she said, her voice a low murmur, like wind through dry leaves. "It identified you." My blood ran cold. The green checkmark had been my validation, my proof of humanity. But now, it felt like a brand. A target. The app hadn't just identified them as unrecognized, it had recognized me as the outlier. The last human. Mark and Mia had risen. They stood on either side of Natalie, their faces blank, their eyes fixed on me. They were all looking at me now, not with love or anger, but with an unsettling, patient assessment. Like predators who had finally identified their prey. I was trapped. In my own home. With my family. My perfect, unrecognized family. The app, in its flawless pursuit of truth, had revealed a horror far deeper than I could have ever imagined. It had told me I was real. And in doing so, it confirmed that everything else around me was a lie. The green confirmation icon on my face, the mark of my humanity, glowed in the screen of the phone Natalie held. And as she took a step towards me, the glint in her eyes was not that of a loving wife, but of something ancient, something that had waited patiently, for a very long time, for the last piece of the puzzle to fall into place. The hum of the server rack in my home office continued, a steady, innocent drone. The world moved on, oblivious. But for me, Oliver Miller, the perfect app had opened a door to a reality I could never unsee. A reality where I was alone, and everything I loved was just an object not recognized. And they knew I knew. And that, I realized with a final, soul-crushing wave of terror, was the real horror.
And so, Oliver's reality shattered forever. Cognito did not fail, it succeeded too well. In its ruthless precision, it did not just expose his family, it exposed him. The true terror was not that his loved ones were unrecognized, but that he was recognized. Marked. Alone. In the end, the most advanced technology does not bring clarity, but only a deeper, more isolating darkness. The price of absolute truth is the loss of everything real.